Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bushwhacking History in Buffalo. Today I got a special edition for you, little chat with a friend of mine who has been explaining to me. Very humbled about that. Paul, welcome to my channel. And what we're going to do is, as you see on the screen here, Boston. Oop, let me hide this. Paul is from and grew up around Boston, and he's very interested in the old world alternative history research that we do with my channel and a lot of other people. So I apologize that it's been this long, Paul. Thanks for sticking with me. We should have probably did this a couple months ago, but I'm a slow moving train. I get there. But so for people that are just filing in, we're going to have a chat, and it's going to be a casual back and forth about, oh geez, what were we just talking about? The color emerald, old Boston, old Buffalo. Dragons, right? So as we talk, I'll pull up certain relevant pictures and articles. Paul will as well. But this is another episode of Bushwhacking History. So if you want to, I'll stop talking. If you want to introduce yourself and how you got interested in what we do in the alternative history niche, if you will, and your school background. You said you were in Spain last month. So Boston,
Greece,
Boston.
Greece,
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Dustin. Obviously, I'm very humbled and very thankful and appreciative that you have the time for me tonight. My name is Paul. I'm I guess Level Light 113 is like my tag, if anyone wants to follow me on Instagram or in the future YouTube. So I'm from the Boston area, and I am here because I follow, but I also respect the perspective and the work that you do, Dustin. A lot of your perspectives and your comments and the way you analyze things. I feel as though I analyze those similar things in like the same way. So my background. I grew up here in the Boston area. I have a math and physics background. That's my bachelor's degree. And my master's, is in engineering management. So, I mean, it's kind of like, that trail of, why things are the way they are and how to analyze them specifically. So when it comes to math, it's either, one thing or the other, right? It's very black and white. And then when it comes to engineering management, really when it comes to like manufacturing, it's planned obsolescence and like lean manufacturing. So that is where my perspective on how our world, right, it has been created and rebuilt, maybe, I'm not sure, several times over. I call it iterations. And when we talk, Dustin, I always kind of like, either I'm cheering you on or really tugging at the strings, like pulling at threads, because and really hearing like what ideas you have on stuff that you're exploring in Buffalo and how it's related to Venice, for instance, or the Roman Empire, or like Greece. And, I just came back from 3 weeks in Greece. I'm very fortunate enough to have that time to do that. Some of the channels that we, share, it's almost like there's a lot, but like some of the top tier ones are Wise Up, on YouTube. And I think it's Hangman, forget his numbers, like it's Hangman 1184, something like that. I think we question the same channels too. We don't really, even those channels too, like there's some ancient history and modern history that we both, kind of share that, you're even displaying like canals, like right in front of us. So like, I think there's like some huge stuff to talk about when it comes to canals and that we can link up with Boston, and Venice and like, in Buffalo and other places across the country. So I think, when you talk about bridges and Legolas, and how you call it Legolas, but I call it monoliths, and those support structures and how we're built, they're built up over time. So, like I said, I'll just say this, like, I'm very much aware that I'm a guest in your house. So, I respect your time and, you're in control. So like, that's my little intro. And I'm very thankful to be here, very humbled. And I'm excited actually, because I feel like we always send videos back and forth and like we always send messages and we never really have that time to like, really like riff, I guess. So this is kind of cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's really humbling, honestly. So yeah, it's about time for real. We should have been done earlier, but things happen for a reason, as they do, right? I used to say the universe tends to unfold as it does, but now I say things happen, so per faith, right?
exactly.
So yeah, thanks again. I mean, that's one of the. So you're looking at on the screen as we go back and forth here. This, I guess, it'll be kind of like a half podcast talking. I'm shooting from the hip here. We got a general outline. As a matter of fact, I didn't even send you one, but we got enough. We got enough material here. So you got Chicago right here. So some of the ideas that we'll be talking about, again, we'll go through the books that I have. One of my main focuses is I'm blessed and grateful that I have a lot of old books. And as a matter of fact, we'll pull them up right now and go over what we're going to go through, because I was
Sure.
looking through these things, getting ready for our talk, and I forgot that I had this book. Now, these books that I have, a lot of them are from my great grandmother and my grandfather who lived in this house, so they were inherited. I've gotten some books given to me too. Shout out to Malachi Crunch and John Horan. You know who you are. Thank you. But so being that you're from Boston, now the idea that I have about what's going on here in Buffalo, not only is it like a good cross section, like I say, for all the old points that we look at as far as the old world or alternative history. And you want to say Tartaria, mud flood. I'm not pulling away from any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, I kind of I'm glad that it pulled me back into doing, it got me away from being actually like a Q-tard, to be honest with you, to look at it like a glass half full, ladle half full.
Yeah.
But then you start getting into it and push through a little bit more. There's a lot more going on. So I'm glad that it pulled me back into getting intrigued about history, right? But heck, my channel used to be called Bushwhacking Tartaria. That said, you start realizing, a lot of stuff is going on in Buffalo, similar to what I see in these channels like you just cited. The architecture, the infrastructure, the old canals, the radial street patterns. So Buffalo, also the water. And it's really important here in Buffalo. I think it's a confluence of earth energies, if you will, water, earth, even air. And that's kind of my drive. So when I get feedback from dudes like you and fans, man, it's if I could just have one person get inspired, it means the world to me, truly.
Yeah.
So I feel compelled to share. I do research all the time. I'm always researching. I have the ability, and I'm grateful I could do it while I'm working. Hope my boss isn't watching. And I have the books. There's a whole other component to it when you present it. It not only is it more work and time consuming, it's a little hectic. But for people who, even yourself, I'm sure can attest to this, you feel compelled to. So I probably would like to get more work out than I could, but my time is taken up. I work and stuff like that. So yeah, Buffalo being a cross section of like, you have the architecture, we have the infrastructure, Erie Canal, what I'm doing with that. The Rust Belt, Boston is a part of that, Detroit, Ohio, the old Rust Belt. So the underlying tone of what I'm getting at is these cities could be more ancient than we're told from mainstream academia, from these actual books that I have and I've just cited. If nothing else, that intrigues me immensely. And the fact that I'm enveloped within one of the cities, Buffalo, and that it's got such beautiful scenery and water.
Absolutely.
I feel compelled to share it. Right. So, again, thank you very much for coming on and for the awesome props and the words, because we link up like that. This effectively represents a network. And not only is Paul interested, he represents a critical look at it from the higher education standpoint of having gone through high level education. We often, dare I say, criticize it, but I make a point to incorporate it as well. That's why I use the books. That's why I find the definitions, present them, because in order to be taken seriously, in my opinion, we have to address and incorporate that as well. So,
absolutely, yeah.
If you want to tail off that, now,
absolutely.
Pictures. I'm going to go through just so people know that are listening, right quick.
Mm-hmm.
As Paul and I go back and forth, I'm going to showcase the books that I have, so you guys know which ones that I'm working for. So yeah, so you'll see pictures going back and forth, and I'll show exactly what book it is that I'm pulling from, and we'll pull out of that. because again, I was going through the books that I have, trying to pull out all the Boston stuff so we can riff on that. So Boston, Buffalo, and let me shout out to Buffalo. We're the only northeastern city that has a sunset over water. All you guys, there you go.
Well, I have to say there are some very subtle links that I've only found so far, and that's like the dredging of Buffalo Harbor, and you probably know the specific dates of that, but like very similar, works have happened, for Boston, and those people who are from Boston, that to move that soil and to like build up a lot of like Back Bay supposedly didn't exist, because it was all underwater, right? So I don't know what happened, right? And like, so that's the exploration factor. But if I took you through a walking tour of Boston, you could totally see the street. Like you've sent me, convincing videos of where, kind of like the neighborhood of where you work. I won't say it, but like, personally, you've sent me like, videos of that, and like, see, dude, like this is like where, there's like a huge drop off, and like, or like, for instance, like where like the earth kind of like cuts up like at an angle, but it covers the buildings and stuff like that. So like that's all around Boston. So it's like, it's kind of like, I've seen that in Europe, I've seen that in Boston, I've seen it all over. Austin, Texas, Philadelphia, like you name it, New York City. It's like super obvious when you just start taking like normal like family trips like everywhere around, and seeing like obelisks. Like you have the McKinley Monument like in Buffalo, and you have Buffalo City Hall. Like there's some crazy architecture in your area that's super similar to Boston, that whether it was truly, there's legitimate like buildings that were built like in the last 100 years that mimic ancient architecture, and I think that's intentional. And like the Greeks, mimicked a lot of Roman, and I should say vice versa. Like Romans mimicked a lot of Greek architecture. So like there's some real like patterns, that we can follow throughout time. So and you were just talking about like the radial patterns and like kind of like urban, I call it urban, we should be calling it urban planning, right, of cities and towns, whether it's radial or grid-like. That's with intention. And I think those are experiments, those are experiments in what works at the current level of whatever this iteration is. So I don't know where to go with all that stuff, but I mean, I think, specifically with like the Buffalo radial pattern, it's very telling that either, part of my, speculation, and, it's like, I used to wait on tables way back in the day. It's restaurant speculation, whether someone will come in or not, but like my speculation is like that radial pattern, like that center downtown area. If I pull up some of my books on Buffalo, like it's super unusual, as if like the town kind of extended into the water. But I mean, that's my opinion. It's just
Go right ahead if you have a specific thing you want to bring up and pull to speak to that.
I mean, I can't
I'll dovetail.
Really? Okay. Because like, sometimes I don't even really know. You just have like these intuitions, like, okay, cool. Like what's Ward like 104 in Buffalo? You know what I mean? Like there's some crazy old maps that I could, I think I have them actually. I think.
Are you talking about a map like?
Yeah, I have it pulled up too. Actually, here we go.
Like this bad boy.
Your dragons, your bridges. Where else I had?
So yeah, speaking of the radial street pattern, I think that's indicative. I think the radial street pattern is indicative of possibly it being here before, where there were nodes branched out. But so for the history of it, Joseph Ellicott is attributed to having made the radial street pattern, who was also, as a matter of fact, let me pull that up. The Ellicott brothers were surveyors and city planners, and they did Buffalo in 1804. Also, they did Washington, D.C. Right. So there was brothers, but Joseph Ellicott is the one that did Buffalo, and I believe the radial street pattern is indicative because they laid a grid pattern over it. The radial street pattern would say is like a Baroque style street pattern, and I have literature on that somewhere. I didn't go through all my stuff, but and when you say canals, yeah, I think that these may have been canals connected before, and other people have said that. I'm not just the only one saying that. I'm in the city that can actually, be able to prove or disprove it possibly. Also, infrastructure that may have been here before, like the bridge. So
Is it like the Infinity Bridge or something like that? Like
the international railway
international?
bridge. That's my next real big project as far as a big episode. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've sent
and
you
then
stuff on bridges too. Like that's a huge, international bridge, the way you explored how it was built and stuff like that. And the caisson, like, it's almost
yeah,
like,
it's not the bridge on top. It's not the metal truss
yeah,
that I'm looking at. It's like almost a magician's trick. It's like, look here, not there. They talk so much about I want to know how here's the main point of that. It's 40 feet of water. Are there any engineers out there that can tell me I went in deep on this one, pun intended, 40 feet of water, and the current there, Paul, is like 10 miles an hour at least constantly. So you got the pressure of the current, you got the pressure of 40 feet water, and they sunk not just one caisson, a bottomless caisson to envelop another one to work in so they can make still
so,
water. In 1873, I find it extremely hard to
so
believe.
that's an interesting topic, that Awar, if you know him,
Yeah, absolutely.
we've riffed about him
Shout
too.
out to Awar and Wood and Nichols.
He's at that. He's now questioning, like, as far as I know, like, I haven't really caught up with everything, but like the last few videos I saw, he's like, really, okay, like, this isn't really like 100%. I don't really know what's going on, but like that kind of that level of research for that he was talking about with like the last 100 years and all that stuff like that. I'm kind of like losing steam a little bit here, but like, I think you know what I mean. Like he has
Oh, you're
spoken
good.
about what you just said about, cement, right?
I'm
And
gonna play an audio right here for you.
yeah, definitely. And I'll just kind of speak over it, like, once you fire it up. So like the cement and the technology behind cement, we when we were blue pilled right before this, Roman cement is like a huge deal. Like that is like a technology that's supposedly lost, right? And it's because it's like still around. It's still holding up structures. Well, I think like the just blanket statement, like the technology of cement and how it's mixed has to be preserved throughout all the iterations. So whoever's the man behind the curtain has to know, like, that this technology has to work in order for the next goal, because it can be waterproof, right? It's holding up. It's like we're talking. I mean, if you want to get into or dive into, like, you know, red brick, I almost, like, I'm so sick of red brick, people talking about red bricks, that it's like a cliche at this point. But like,
How dare you?
you know what I mean? Like, I know, but
I
like the
see something.
cement
You want to
is
see
the
something
glue.
interesting?
It's the glue holding it all together. So yeah, go for it.
So I was just talking about. Sorry to interrupt you, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go for it. Yeah.
Joseph Ellicott, his brother, did in Washington D.C. And you want to see red brick? There's an old quote. I forget who said it, but maybe you'll know. I found Rome in red brick and I left it in marble.
Yeah. There's some. Yeah, if yeah.
Check out. This
Yeah.
is Washington D.C. and oh boy, very
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
It's 1928. It's almost all the buildings, dude. Now there's similar names to Buffalo here. You can tell the brothers did it. Now I don't even know, the Ellicott brothers might even be a psyop. I don't know. Like, things are attributed to people and
Right.
put on them, and then obviously then Joseph Ellicott went crazy later on in his life. But here's all I wanted to show is that this was all red brick. All the buildings were pretty much all red brick, and I think a lot of the stuff, like I showed in the Basilica, Father Baker episode I did a couple years ago, they just build stuff around the red brick.
So that's where I think it's like
All red brick.
it's an easy manufacturing, product. So that's where I get lost with, like, the red brick, like, talk, because I think it's just a useful tool to rebuild.
I agree. It's like one of the most basic constituents of building is the building block bricks. Yeah.
Right. And I think like over time we have forgotten, like, how to make those cement bricks or blocks, right? Because I was sending you photos of Greece, the Citadel of Mycenae. I can fire up that video too, that I showed you, and literally these are stones that look like they were poured, like as if they were liquid at one point, and they just, like, this is what Wise Up talks about, right? So I only talk about channels that I contribute to. So, like, I should say Wise Up and Hangman are like two channels that like, whatever. But like, it's just like that concept is very telling to me that like, these stones were made in such a way and that technology was forgotten and then
poured on site. Yeah, poured on site.
And it's
Another
bricks were the easiest, quickest way of manufacturing, that building tech. And I think that's part of the iteration, so like there's like a manufacturing process that has to be followed after every time some devastation, catastrophe, whatever you want to say happens. We have to first like mine, right? We have to build like it's quicker than the time before, right? And however we learn is based on whoever's retaining that information. So like the higher ups or the man behind the curtain, or so we say, they might be holding on to certain versions of technology. And I don't know, but my theory is that cement, just like AWAR has been talking about, cement is a critical manufacturing product to like pass the baton on to the next generation. Like, hey, this is the mixture, this is how it's made, and like this is what it does. And whether like the specs on strength capabilities is preserved or not, I don't know. But see, like you always talk, so like you show all these pictures about like railroads and all this stuff like that. That's a next version of that, like iteration. Like what needs to happen? All right, we need to make bricks. Next, we need to mine metal, right? You've talked about metal on
progress of civilization. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like playing SimCity, right? And so they know they have to do this certain thing, like to mine metal to either create watches, because timekeeping is huge, right? For keeping track of time, and also like metal for trains and engines and stuff like that, and transporting goods. So like, and also information and data. So like copper wires or like metal wires or fiber optic cables, whatever you want to say, it doesn't matter. Like there's different versions. And it's like as if this version is like the same, right? And I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm going to go off this is where I tend to go off the rails. Is like sometimes I
go off the rails, bro. That's what we're here for.
No, I mean, I see statues of like, for instance, like, I don't know, like Julius Caesar, right? And like, I guess George Washington or like anyone else, but like, and you're just like, oh wow, they look very similar. And like when you go to Europe, or like I was just in Greece again, and like Italy, I go all over Italy and France and stuff like that. There's legit statues that have, and there are other channels that talk about this too. The heads are missing, but it's almost like a divot is like there, and like. But then there's like busts, right, that are supposed to fit in those places. So I think as time goes on, there used to be a way of like changing people's perceptions, and whether it's painting frescoes on a wall, you whitewash it, paint something new. Stained glass windows can be pounded out and new stained glass windows can be made. And like also statues, they can be dismantled, right? Because Wise Up has talked about that, how they almost fit like Lego pieces, but like those busts are like, they can be taken out and replaced with new people's faces. They could be female, they could be male, it doesn't matter. And I think, I don't know, there's like stuff like that I was hoping to talk about with you, because like, I think that's...
Oh yeah, this is the first of many though. Keep that in mind also.
Yeah. No, it's easier today with like the propaganda that we're receiving like in the media. So like digital AI stuff, it's like, CGI, presidents, CGI celebrities, whatever. So like all that stuff is like super interchangeable now with like Photoshop, CGI, or whatever you want to call it. So like, I think, so when it comes to like, I'll bring it back, urban planning and what you talk about, I think there's something there with regards to, okay, here's the international bridge. Here's the foundation where it was 1,000 years ago. Maybe it was 100 years ago. I don't know. But we know it's there because we've had really good urban planning and mapping now. So when
right there, it's on your screen right now.
When the next catastrophe happens, whatever that may be, the tippity top of those pylons or monoliths or supports are still there. They're above water, right? So
that's what I'm questioning. Yeah, just so people know.
I don't think you need to question it. I think it's fair. I mean, sometimes your intuition is kind of like a little bit. You know what I mean? So
I have a rule that I go by. I posted it on IG earlier too. A
Yeah.
movie called Ronin with De Niro.
Yeah. I
If there's
love
ever
your,
any doubt, there is no doubt. Like if you get a hunch for something,
yeah.
like I operate in a way like my MO is if I get a hunch for something that I'm focused on, it's probably that. It's probably that. And then if there's like a synchronicity
So
associated with it, it's like that's a affirmation for me personally. I'm not,
absolutely. So like the
you know,
basics, so Buffalo's basic street framework, if you kind of scroll to the right a little bit on your screen, I mean, I don't really know if you have a good, do you have a place where Niagara Street and Genesee kind of interchange? It's like a big crisscross. Um,
yep, that's right here.
I think it's called, actually,
Niagara Square.
yeah. So
Matter
that,
of fact, let's do
so
this. Let's go
yeah, do you have a better
to
map of that? Or no, it's fine if you leave it there because I can talk to that. So, so the reason for those of you listening, it's easier for me to judge and discern Buffalo, um, because I don't know Buffalo, and I don't know if anyone's ever tried that. But like to really look at, for instance, I'll look at Venice. Right, there's streets that have been covered and buried supposedly by Napoleon to create boulevards. Right, and that's literally like canal. I should say, I'll reword it. Canals have been filled in, backfilled, just like you talk about for Buffalo, and like
boom.
how,
That's what
yeah.
I
So, all
think.
right, so
Yeah.
that intersection, right? So I have that in an old book right here. It's called Buffalo and Western New York: Architecture and Human Values by John D. Randall. It's right here, and I know I'm going really quick, but like
Don't worry about it. You're good, Paul. Just keep on
essentially
riffing, buddy.
that area like was either like it was closer to water, like that downtown, or it's either it was closer to water or it's
Well,
further
I
away.
think
Like,
this street went
yeah,
right to the water. That's Main
100%.
Street.
I mean, of course, we're in the realm of speculation, right, and theories.
Yes,
But I mean,
yes.
it's very obvious to me that like that particular location was very selective, right? It's a very, and I'll go so far as to say, especially with the, the kind of like the center there, like it's almost like why would they choose it there? Like why not have
Oh,
more?
like the epicenter?
Yeah, with the obelisk and everything, like
So
very
here's the deal.
like a
Check this out,
phallic,
Paul. This is
obelisk.
Main Street.
Yeah,
That's
and don't you
that's
ever
Main
look at
Street.
the water?
It's built over. It looks like a dock, and
100%.
there's really deep sewers. Careful, you say. Careful with the 100%. People are the trolls are going to be like, "You're claiming,"
Yeah,
but
I know.
I'm
Well,
just joking.
here's where I'll go with it. So it's very telling to me, right? When a street all right. So I know it's like it's outlandish, right? But like if a street is
That's right
called
here.
if a street is called Canal Street, for instance, I'll bet Buffalo has a Canal Street. I'm not saying that like as a weird way, but Boston has a
Yes.
Canal Street and New York City has a Canal Street. And I'm not saying that necessarily means that it was a canal at one point, but like why else would you name it canal? I don't know. So there's like certain obvious stuff, I guess that we talk about. So, but anyways, like the center where Niagara and Genesee interchange, like in Buffalo, I think that's
Crazy.
like the center of a big city, and I think that means that the water, either like the coast, like right there at Buffalo, is either further out, or I don't know. There's like
I
some,
think that's exactly what it is. It was all built up. That's kind of what I'm working on. I'm doing
yeah,
more than just the international bridge. That's
yeah,
effectively they pour over it. We know that they backfilled in the Erie Canal with the 190,
right,
which
right.
is at the bottom of your screen right here. You see me going back and forth. That's the old Erie
Oh
Canal.
man,
So
I
yeah,
love when you go to like those spots. That's great. That's like that's like what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like, and I do it, but it's just on a different level. It's like, oh, cool. Like my backyard looks exactly like Buffalo. Like, what the hell?
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what got the
Oh
old Rust Belt, I guess you'd say. That's
yeah,
that's what urges me to get out and do it too. Because when I do share,
yeah,
people are receptive to it. You know what I mean? Just like you said. So like with the international bridge, getting on that, what I'm saying is
right.
what's interesting here is how in the description of it, I urge people to read this. I'll put a description or I'll put a link in the description by tomorrow.
Oh
It's
yeah,
at archive.org. I have like when I was just busting your chops about making claims,
Well, I don't
I'm
know if you
wary
remember.
of that because what I do for so, I don't do this full time. But by
Of course.
profession, my professional job is I'm a collector. I'm a
Right.
commercial business,
Yeah.
like a business to business money collector. Um, so I when a client places a account with us, it's called a claim. They are claiming that another business owes them money. Now, of course, we err with our clients because it's all legal. It's all per terms and conditions on contracts, signed contracts, work orders, service orders, stuff like that.
Oh man,
One of our big clients is Google. So
yeah.
clients that businesses that advertise web space on Google, some of them don't pay their invoices on time. That generates a debt owed to a business. Some of the businesses don't have
Right.
enough in-house receivables to handle that. Long story short, they hire it out. We do that. I do that. So when
Yeah.
I speak to people, I'm wary about not making claims. I guess my job is such that
Yeah.
I'm wary about talking because sometimes I deal with lawyers. Sometimes people will say "f off," call my lawyer. I deal with big companies or small businesses. The small businesses are more apt to tell you to go stick it where the sun don't shine. Right? A big company has an accounts payable employee who's beholden to a manager. Anyway, I'm getting off track. What I'm saying
No,
is
well,
I'm
I guess
wary about not speaking and like saying claims because of my
yeah.
profession. So I know that it's, in talking casually,
So
some people hold.
yeah, you're practicing. There's two things. You're practicing legalese and sigil magic. Like you're kind of like you're very careful with your words.
How dare you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Okay.
mean, no, really. I mean, all words, carry.
Very wary of what I say. Yes.
Yeah, like they carry power. So like that's the the choice of words is very specific, right? I don't I like it's like there's a couple of channels out there. It's like you'll say, "Oh, I don't say understand you. I understand you," or something like that. Like
Overstand.
that.
Yeah, that's a little
Yeah,
bit
it's
like
like,
getting a little too. I hear that. I understand. Or like,
but we
the
take
whole
it away from
dichotomy of things, like
yeah,
whole and whole. Whole can be your whole spirit, or whole
true,
could be empty. Right? There's a
true,
I don't. That's why I won't always spell words right because I kind
right?
of say it's like tongue in cheek. Like I don't want a bunch of dead Phoenician wizards telling me how
Yeah,
to
yeah.
use my own
Well, I mean,
lexicon.
an example of
Jokingly,
that is walking around Austin. Did I lose you? Um, uh, Walking around Austin, Texas, right? And I'll see like churches that are founded, right? So I love like seeing like like a location that was founded, and especially the last few years of kind of walking into this like alternative cosmology, we'll say, and like learning about how the realm is constructed and built up over it's there's some interesting words that people choose like when they're constructing buildings and or even just conducting like day-to-day business. It's very interesting to me. So
yeah. What do you think about this one? So this is that'll segue us into a little. I
100%.
will briefly touch on my
Yes,
query with the International Bridge because
yes.
number one, this is the official description for it. And again, you can find this and go through it for people who are listening at
Hmm.
your leisure. Okay. This details everything from the letter that this is an international effort. This is the International Railway Bridge. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of everything because you can look it up yourself on Wiki. I'm interested in the anomaly for me is like you just said. First of all, it says constructed over. I don't question at all the truss being laid over it. Okay, but when
Hmm.
they're detailing it, that's where they focus on mostly where they got the steel from, the industry of it, yada yada. I'm like, well, how did they sink those caissons in that water? I'm familiar with the water. I fish in that water. I've been skiing in that water. It's extremely dangerous. I know people have died in that water. So what
Right.
I'm questioning is how they sunk. Now, this is something that I'm going to send out to the listeners here for if you guys can help me, any engineers who are interested in a serious
Well,
anomaly.
well, that's the thing is like how do they prevent water from if they want currently they kind of sink like metal
Coffer
down,
Dam,
right, and surround the
pylon.
surround the structure
It
or
details all that in here. It details the whole
yeah,
process. I may be calling bullshit on it.
right. But well, I guess what I'm saying is, could they use wood? So And
They show.
is the wood
Check it out.
covered in creosote? We've talked about that before with each other. You know, because that's kind of like a waterproofing, you know, substance that, you know, it wasn't really, you know, pressure treated wood, you know, wasn't really available until like the like later half of like the 1800s or so, we think, or whatever time. See, that's another thing with time. See, all right, it's almost like we have to reset a little bit, because time
Hammer.
for me
Keep hammering.
is you know, like how we perceive time and all that stuff, and how it's been jumbled. I think you've had Autodidactic on your channel, and Michelle Gibson, and I think like we kind of, what I
Absolutely.
try to
Shout out to them both.
appreciate is that, you know, there has been like a break in time, and I think one of your last two videos you even brought it up, how like the possibility of a break of 1,000 years, you know. I think it's plausible, and and that's where, you know, so when it comes to like, all right, something like, for instance, pressure treated wood wasn't really invented until the latter half of the 1800s. That's like a claim at this point, because I could open it up in Encyclopedia Britannica and see, okay, it's cool right there, but like, who wrote? You know what I mean? It's like, where's all this information coming from? So like, that's kind of like where I think I jive with you a little bit. Like, we don't know when a technology was built, and because you have used the term planned obsolescence, well, what is planned, right? And if it's, for instance, like if the iPhone 14 just came out, are they ready for like the iPhone 20? You know, are they like, have they been ready for like all this tech? They just kind of siphon it, they kind of filter it, or like, it's almost like a drip, right? They drip out that tech as time goes on. So, so I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but like, that's kind of
absolutely
like why I appreciate your stuff. And like, I think because we don't know. And when it comes to like for instance, like the Buffalo, you know, factories, like there were massive factories in your area, massive, like 64-acre building complexes in Buffalo, right?
huge. Yep.
Right?
The
It's
industry
like,
here 100 years ago was insane.
yeah, the Larkin factories, I think, is what one of them was, and it's like, it's massive factory. And I know that Massachusetts and Lawrence, Lowell, Haverhill, if anyone knows what those areas are, Boston, like, you know, there's just towns around, New Bedford, they're huge manufacturing, you know, businesses there, factory, like just buildings there, and they're literally on or next to water, and they used to be, they've either been dredged or canaled or whatever, you name it. So that's where the link, that's why I appreciate researching Buffalo tech or urban structures, because I think there's something there, and I think there's a huge gap too. So like that's where I'm kind of getting worked up on it. Like, I don't know if you've ever looked at like the counties, like how your counties are structured. You know, they're very, you know, they're obviously very square, but like there's a huge cutoff, like where your harbors are. And now I'm just being very like, Dragoon Mountains. Oh man,
Yeah.
I would love to pick your brain about dragons. Like, I have so much to talk about with you.
Yeah, that was what I was looking for my planned obsolescence episode that I did. But yeah, dude, I love your enthusiasm. It's getting me going.
Yeah,
and I appreciate.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of coastline looks artificial, and that'll make reminds me of shouting out Paul Cook, because Paul Cook does geopolymer work also, and he's got a different. He does extensive work on it, boots on the ground. So shout out to Paul Cook. Yeah, Paul Cook. He's Oi Brava. He's across the pond in England.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so what I was just showing, dude, was so how we had what you were detailing is perfect, because I'm gonna show this
because
clip.
I've been alone with my thoughts for a while, so
It's all good, man. So yeah, the caisson in the description is detail of the caissons, how they allegedly did that. They had to do two, like a bottomless caisson, because some of the floor was different. You got someone had a rock, some had, but they admit that they couldn't get divers down there in 40 feet of water at 10 miles an hour. They're just way too dangerous. So they shot blind effectively, literally. Now, also, as you were talking, I was going through, because I have in that description, there's all the schematics of the piers, and someone who is a critic might say, and rightfully so, you're telling me that these weren't built. There's just, I can go on archive.org and pull this up and show you all of the schematics and look what they did. And I say, yeah, well, that's really
done, you know, yeah,
that's really great. I'm going to play an audio clip of
go for it,
something that addresses that critique. Okay, and it was from shout out to Philip Druzinin, OG Russian researcher. I haven't had a video with Philip in a while, but he's one of the originals that got me interested in doing the old school, old world research.
Oh,
And I haven't heard of Victor. The Bugman hasn't been around in a while, but this is going to detail exactly what we might be seeing when they present schematics like this. So here's the deal: if I can't find, and shout out to you, Toronto Joubert, because he might have to look up and solicit some data he might have to look up and solicit some data in Fort Erie, because again, this was an international effort. I might not have it accessible here in Buffalo municipality. Somebody in Canada might be more apt to and available to get that. Now, what am I getting at here, Dustin? What I'm getting at is I have a very hard time believing the caissons were built. And someone might say, well, they have all these schematics like I'm showing right here on screen. And that's a very good point. But the audio clip that you're going to listen to between Philip and the Bugman addresses that directly. So without further ado, I'm going to play it, and I want to get your take on it. Also, people in the chat, what do they think? Because again, I'm doing more work on this along with the Erie Canal and Viking. That's another thing. Vikings being here, Erie Canal might have been the Erie Canal, maybe. I don't know. I just like saying it, and I'm not just saying it just to say it, though. I do have a lot of good evidence for it. Now, without further ado,
go for it.
Yeah, keep in mind there's schematics here, and you can just say that they're here we go. Look at this: 40 feet. The piers 4 and 5, 47 feet of water, 48 feet of water, and it's constantly at least 10 miles an hour. It fluctuates because of the wind coming off the lake. I've done an episode on the Seiche. It's a standing wave that increases the level of the water, also the current, and because of our winter, dude, it's a shortened work season, like 8 months. And they made that okay, this is what they're saying, guys. They're saying that they built that bridge in 3 years. So 3 years with all those conditions.
Actually,
and ice
what year? By the way, what year did they start?
1771 or 17 or excuse me, 1870, and it was completed by 1873. Excuse me.
Did you before you play the video, did
Yes.
you kind of, so this is where I like to cross-reference stuff when I'm doing a city or town. What else? So I asked the question is what else is being constructed at that time? And a lot of times it's most of the city, like literally the entire city. I'm not saying like in this case, but
well, there is one actually right in the middle of your screen. This is the other anomaly that I have.
Was it built at the same time? You know what I mean?
Yes, within
incredible earthworks, like literally like
exactly.
Incredible architecture that's being built. Like my example is Austin, Texas. Like there, if you walk up and down Congress Street of Austin, Texas, I've gone there plenty of times, and I've just had enough time to catalog how many buildings. It's like almost every building on Congress Street. I mean, I'm being
wow.
I'm being like, I'm over, like, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I mean, it's like the capital, like all the towns up and down Congress Street. It literally must have been like to create that town at the same time. It was like 1860, 1865. The whole town must have every single person, all hands on deck, building these stone, like perfect square building. Like it's just it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous.
It's nuts. So, that's why another thing that you mentioned. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. That's why I like Buffalo, because like I'll roam the streets literally digitally or virtually, I should say. And I'll be like, all right, cool. Like, when was that building built? Like, that's crazy. Like, you know what I mean? So that's
what gets my gravy going, honestly, is like, that's why I feel that I'm here for a reason. So in this city.
Yeah.
So earthworks, man, that's another facet.
Yeah.
When I say architecture or the infrastructure in Buffalo.
Yeah.
It's a good cross section from Buffalo to Niagara Falls all the way out to Oswego even. Where do you see? I'll show you pictures of Oswego.
Were you going to show a video, or sorry, go ahead.
Yep, I'm leading into that. So we can have the schematics and we can have the detail like I showed from these works. If I don't see video of it or pictures that I believe valid, I'm going to apply exactly what Victor Bug is saying right here. Again, this is a chat from Philip Druzinen's channel from a while ago with him and the Bugman. So listen up, y'all. Here we go.
How can how can I explain lack of footage of actually building stuff? How can I explain it?
Well, you know how they just say they don't actually explain it. They just say they build it, and they don't expect anyone to question that. So
Have you asked anyone in Copenhagen historical, society or something? Maybe they have some sketches or whatever, any
there are
documentation.
always they say that there are always sketches, but and that you can always see them if you do this and do that, and but they are sketches. They don't claim to have photographs of construction. I haven't seen, or well, I've seen it on the internet that they say that, but I
I
haven't.
mean, it's okay to build a small building, right? Like maybe these are not very huge ones, but when you have a huge one, you have to have some documentation because
Yeah, and
like
also
150 years, where's documentation?
yeah, and people in architecture today, they document every step of the process very neatly, and in every detail is correctly laid out. So you can redo the process basically, and you don't have that from the old world. You only have sketches, as if someone went in and analyzed how the building's architecture was, and then he drew up how it was with all the correct dimensions, like a surveyor.
Wow.
And then he created an autograph or an architectural plan for that, and that's what we have, and that's what they use as evidence.
Dude, so I want to just pause on this picture. This is what I run into all the time. If you go back to like the YouTube video, the the structures of everything, it just looks Roman, right? And I know that's overplayed, right, in the fringe kind of realm. But like,
How can I explain?
you know what I mean? So like that, if you freeze that frame, so like that,
building stuff.
Dustin, I have found literally villages in Greece, seaside, that have Roman architecture. It's not there anymore, but I've found evidence of like old pictures of villages in Greece on islands and whatever. That it boggles my mind. And I know the blue pill way or the normies way of looking at all this is like, well, Greece and Rome, they're everywhere. They conquered all those areas and all those islands and all this stuff. But you know what? It's all over Philadelphia, Boston, Buffalo. You go to Austin, it's the same thing. It freaks me out sometimes, Dustin. So I not like in a bad way. I mean, there was like in the beginning, like, do you know what I mean? So,
yes.
Like, it's just like, whoa, wait a second. How come no one else sees this? Do you know what I mean? So, like that level of perception, I think, is like really critical. So now it sounds like Dresden. Now I don't really watch his channel too much, but it sounds like he was investigating, or kind of was he just like kind of speaking with someone who's like a professional, like.
Oh no, he was just Victor Bug was another researcher that was around back in the day that did a lot of videos with Philip Druzenin.
Yeah.
And I just found that one. I remember listening to it back in the day, and I had to go back and find it, and it's perfect because that's kind of, I'm not purposely trying to disprove it. If I can find evidence, I will change my mind. I just have a hard time believing not. So just so people know, and I'll underline, not the erector set of the what you see on the screen here. That's the International Bridge, not the erector set of the steel truss on top. It's the caisson piers that they're not visually dominating to the eye. That's another magician's trick about it. And with the literature, they tell way more. They do detail it's called the subaqueous work on installing these caissons, but they admit rightfully, outright at least, or that the engineer said they could not get divers down there. So what I'm saying, were these piers here? And did they change the narrative?
Would we say, would it be safe to say, like, let's say it's plausible, right? Let's say it's possible to do that. Right? So can I show you my screen first?
Go ahead. Oh yeah, let me
So for instance, you were
have
just
at it, bro.
Let me see.
This will give me a chance to get some folders ready.
Yeah, no problem. So you were just showing if you can see my screen. Oh shoot, I didn't do.
Yep. No, you're good. And then I'll add it.
It's like an
Hey,
old.
thanks everybody in the chat. Kara K, always stopping by. Semper Fish, I appreciate it.
So
There
now
you go.
I'll go
Now
ahead.
you're on screen. You're on screen.
Am I? So my screen's a little big. I can make it. I can zoom in. So my thoughts are, how did they build Venice? Right? It's an entire city literally on top of water. And now I was raised. I used to visit there. When I was young, I've been fortunate enough to travel a little bit. There, and so the woodpile kind of concept isn't like that far removed from what you're showing me from like your designs. So maybe that design has been improved upon when it comes to Buffalo, but Venice has been around for like quite some time. So this is like the 9th and 10th century. You know what I mean? Like the way I should say. All right, so I just randomly pulled up like I just Googled, or whatever I should say, like internet searched.
No, you're good. Hey, they're one of our clients. We collect for them.
How Venice buildings were built, right? And so I just needed this photo, and this is enough. I knew it without even searching, but like this is enough to show to me that like this tech needs to be passed down from generation to generation. Otherwise, we can't build dams, we can't build bridges, we can't cross vast, like that's commerce, that's building, that's communication, like whatever you want to say. But like it seems a little far-fetched, right? So like who's going to check? Now I'm going to play both sides here, and like who's going to check that there's a wood pile under there, right? So so I'm not going to dig, I'm not going to have billions of dollars and have that money to like go to like the International Bridge like outside of Buffalo, but like those pylons are probably there. I don't know. So if I scroll down, so how is Venice built? The floating city. Like some of these phrases, the way they talk about stuff, it's just laughing in your face. It's not floating, it's buried. Like, you know what I mean? So I know that's also like kind of crazy to think, but I mean,
yeah, you were saying that. That's a good point. It is out there, but it's a little hidden.
Like I said, when you go to Venice, and that it's just an example, right? It's just an example, but like it's like, how the hell did they do this? They're literally stone, beautiful stone. I'll say it like Roman or ancient Greek structures are literally on top of pylons. Are you kidding me? So like it's just I'm sure like this archaeology is for real. So like that's the thing, is like we second guess ourselves when we start thinking about this stuff. You know what I mean? So I think that's my issue is what is real and what is fake. So I guess I can stop presenting, but like that's kind of like where I wanted to show you like that. That's literally just a random picture of like cross section of how buildings were built in Venice, and it's the same as like it's the same structure as what you showed me of the International Bridge. So I guess
that's where you see the nexus points.
Yeah.
That's when the research starts connecting in the nexus points and the nodes start. You're like, oh wow, that looks similar over here. So that's when you start thinking like, I'm going to show a picture right now of old school Oswego from 1855, and it's like hard to differentiate. Maybe if it was even like a Venice type of. That's why. So again, not to like pick on this trope or this aspect of the Tartarian mud flood thing.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that what if this was way more ancient and the Vikings were here, for example. One of the things that I'm getting my boots on the ground about and doing the Erie Canal is, you remove one little line from Erie and it's Eric. And I have gone and done research on Norwegian historians, and I'm going to present that. And I have so much stuff lining up, man. I believe that the Vikings, so when they come in, the Viking, Nova Scotia, whatever, I believe, in my opinion, what I'm going to try to prove going forward, I think New York State might have been Vinland. And to get into the interior of the fur pelt trade here in the interior of the states was extremely lucrative. Okay. I believe that when the Vikings came down, and you talk about going in the front door, when I say going in the front door, that's the St. Lawrence. Okay. They would come down let's show that on my screen right now, and I'll share this, and I'll explain my hypothesis here, okay? And then I'll get into something else, and this will lead us into maybe getting ready to wrap up soon. But so what I believe is that I believe that the Vikings were here in the Viking Age, okay? And I believe that they did a stat. I think that New York State, as you see on your screen here, I think that Vinland, as Leif Erikson described it, and I have a lot of books that reference him. I think that they were using maybe the Erie Canal. It might have been navigable, or a series of waterways from the Hudson. Now you say, what's the importance of that? Well, they used to, the front door is the St. Lawrence. When the Vikings were coming from Europe and over there, they would come down the St. Lawrence, and you get into the Lake Ontario, which is Old Lake Frontenac.
Interesting.
And yep, you would have to then there's a dead end at Niagara Falls. And I believe that's the clinch point. And I have actually cited that before in the reading that I did about my book. Mm-hmm. That's a clinch point where you would hold. But if you had a back door, which would be you can go around it and get into the lucrative interior of the fur pelt trade, which is going down past the St. Lawrence, getting up into New York Harbor, into the Hudson. And this is my opinion. This is what I think the Vikings were here. And I have Norwegian historians that say that the Vikings were definitely probably in New York Harbor, probably in Florida, probably in Mexico. It doesn't make sense that they just stopped in Nova Scotia. I agree with that. I think that the Vikings were able to access the interior through a navigable series of waterways, whether it was the Erie Canal, an ancient canal, and that would have been a back door around the falls, effectively a portage. And I think that they were taking it back to Europe and trading it with the Byzantine East. Now, that's not talked about in history, but that's one of the...
Can I kind of like sneak in? This is where I think we're both going to... So, of course, this is where we differ a little bit. Right. So, but I think there's definitely something there, because we've had some kind of like normies or blue pill History Channel kind of like information fed to us. Like there's like a tablet that was found right somewhere in like the middle of the country that's like Nordic or something writing, or there's tablets with like Jewish Hebrew writing and stuff like that. But I think the Viking kind of concept is, of course, as we all know, plausible, right? But in addition to that, I think it's also very singular, meaning I think there's plenty of evidence for Chinese, the Chinese culture that's here. And also, as we were just talking about, the Roman and Greek, however you want to call that, like Italian or whatever, Mycenaean kind of cultures, and then Moors, right? So we've also talked about Tartaria. I mean, we haven't, but personally, we've talked.
Oh, they've been discussed. Yeah.
Questioned that, but in general, like the Moors and so forth, like how I guess Black, Americans or Black, I guess Native Americans, right? So there's a lot of plausible and like interesting data that's in the public domain that leads me to believe that like there's more than just Vikings, right? So it's almost as if it was just as much of a melting pot before. There was like a break somewhere along the line. There was either a catastrophe or what we say is like a flood or whatever, and that kind of washed away. I mean, we haven't even talked about like. Well, you know what? See, that's the thing, is that's the tangent that's so when it comes to Vikings and stuff like that, that is where I'm like, okay, well then who built? You're showing me star forts. Who built canals? Who built, all these Roman and Greek structures? Was it Vikings? So like that's where I'm like, okay, maybe it was more of like a melting pot. Maybe it was like an international kind of like effort. And over time, the man behind the curtain has just learned the best way to erase our memory in such a way that like, forget about those newspapers, forget about those books. Here's like some new information. Here's a new history. Here's a new like way of interpreting the way things happened. So, you know what I mean? So I'm not like disagreeing with you in general, but it's more like there has to be a way where it was all cultures kind of like, as like a melting pot. There has to be. It wasn't just Viking. You know what I mean? So like the names, right? Because I could throw at you other names of other places around the United States that were like not Viking. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like where I'm going with that. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying like the Erie Canal is one thing, but there's also like, I don't know, is Hudson like the Hudson River like named? You know what I mean? Like there's just like, or old names of rivers. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Like,
I'm with you on all that. I
You know
agree
what I
with you
mean? Okay.
entirely.
all right.
I've
cool.
yeah, I 100% agree. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, one of the books that I have, I've met the author because he's based here in Buffalo. One of the major books that I use, The Shadows of the Western Door, that has the
I
dragon
knew you were
path.
going to bring this up. I love this book. I bought it. I don't have it with me
Awesome.
right now, but yeah.
Okay, dude. So I'm in
Great
communication with the author, Mason, right?
Yeah.
Very good dude. We've, as a
That
matter
was
of
a
fact,
cool
we had.
video.
Thanks, man. I've read a couple of them from here, so yeah, I'm with you on all that. As a matter of fact, one of the videos I've shared before, or I presented it, I forget, it was from like Leonard Nimoy, like In Search of,
It's a
from
bot.
way back in the day. He was talking about Mystery Hill, and he cited, I think he's an anthropologist or something. I forget his profession,
Mhm.
but Barry Fell. He was he wasn't specified in like historical for what his hypothesis was, but he believes that there were, you ask who did the canals, well, they were attributed back to the ancient Mesopotamians, right? The Sumerians.
See,
But
that's like crazy. That's insane.
well, here's the deal. I'm with you on all that, and I'll actually go see when I agree with something, I'll double down and say I'll double down on that, right? And I think I probably use that in wrong context, because when it said double down, it's like kind of a negative thing. But here's the deal: if I believe I'm right, if I believe to be right, I definitely will double down, dig a foxhole, dig a basement in the foxhole, and say, get me out of it. So that's Barry Fell has cited that he believes that, like when you say Moors, like Basques were here 1000 BC. So that's what I think we're seeing, dude. I think that something happened, or people just left because things move around, right? And you could say it's mud flood or whatever, but I've addressed overgrowth before, purposeful buryment, oh geez, what's the name of that place in Turkey that the most recent?
Göbekli Tepe or something.
Right. They allegedly that was purposely buried. So we know we know academia says that there's certain things are purposely buried. Add to that, maybe not purposely buried, maybe just overgrowth and sedimentation does occur still.
So,
a lot of civilizations are made next to rivers. Rivers overflow. If you build canals off of these rivers and you don't have a municipality to constantly dredge them, and you have 100-year storm, the banks overflow. What you can get is something that looks like a mud flood. So if you incorporate what Barry, I'm not saying he's right, but he's an accredited historian. He passed away. He believes that Basques and Phoenicians were here 1,000, even Phoenicians. Where's Martin Luther? Oh boy. So that has to be addressed. Now, where did people left? I think I think the New World is a true old. Now, also Chinese. There was a great Chinese explorer before Columbus called Zheng Ha. I think it's like Jengha. He was a maritime sailor before Columbus was. I think he was definitely over in the west coast of America.
That's where I become lost in the clouds, right, when it comes to names and locations, because I'm trying to think of this whole fringe category as global, right? And I think that might be part of my problem too sometimes, because I think you brought up in one of your recent videos that some of these catastrophes or destructions or mud floods, whatever, I think you were saying it 2 videos ago, that like there's it's localized, right? You were saying that like sometimes we riff about videos about like I think it's either India or Philippines or something like that. You'll send me these catastrophic like just crazy like mountains falling into water or something like that. Remember, like I don't know, you just sent like, and it's just localized, right? And we don't know why they happen or how they happen, like earthquakes.
Yeah, like debris flows. Yeah, with the mud floating. Yeah, crazy stuff that's localized happens from either like a lahar or an earthquake.
Yep, like volcanoes, earthquakes. I think there's something there. Are they like
volcanic ash, like Wise Up says?
or like, are they planned, right? So there's situations where, like, you know, massive earthquakes or tsunamis happen just kind of, and because what, tectonic plates are shifting, like, is that for real? Like, do you know what I mean? So like, once we dive into this fringe category, all that stuff has to be, we have to find a new baseline, and this whole like tectonic plates or whatever, like Earth's core is moving and all this stuff. Yes. All right. So this is another thing, like how limestone, oh man, like when you started showing these pictures, like, it's just reminding me of like the red stone from Egypt that, I don't know why. It's like we haven't even talked about that, but in Buffalo, there's an obelisk somewhere that's like red stone that's specific, and I think there's something to that too that I want to bring that up to you sometime too. It's like stone that was only used for like burying people or obelisks. It was like really this crazy like threads that I've been pulling on. But this under the ground here, you've brought this up a bunch of times, and how they describe how like the soil is like it's like oh, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Are you joking me right now?
Like what? In reference to like showing how
Red bricks, yeah.
Well, what interests me with these things is everyone recognizes this from your high school textbooks about sedimentation and layering of different types of rock and everything. And I just always thought it was curious that they had these block-like limestone layers. Like it's almost like it's indicating that there was civilization there. They're not directly outright saying it, but what would you call the term as a truth drop?
In case you decided to be an archaeologist, just like
it's extremely tricky, dude.
And you wanted to dig, and in case you found some bricks like 10 feet down, don't worry about that. Like, don't just look the other way. There's bricks everywhere. Like I'll go on a hike and I'll find a red brick in the middle of the woods. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
That's what I'm trying to get at.
I don't need to swear or anything, but it's like, come on, man.
It's okay.
Like, so, some of the things that I missed like tonight that I wanted to bring up with you are like, well, you know what? There's a lot. So I think we've covered a lot.
I think that we've covered a lot. There's a whole bunch more that I got to do too. I'm going to, like the Erie Canal. And here's the deal. This isn't the one and done. And we might have been all over the place, and we might have said some points beforehand that we want to address that we haven't, but it is what it is. We talk about stuff and we hip fire, you see what sticks. It is.
I mean, the star forts category is massive. There's star forts in Boston, literally in the city of Boston. There are star forts. Yeah. And they're covered up. There's some in Dorchester, but they're not there. I mean, they've either been bulldozed or whatever.
This is the 1899. You got some radial action going on. I do look for radial action. Boston's a little bit different because you're literally, it's like a peninsula.
You won't find it. And I've done this. I have the iterations of how Boston was built up. They literally needed. Sometimes I think like how we call it mud flood was planned, or like they expect it to happen. So like, Boston's, backfilling to make it larger was a huge supposed job. And but I know, right? It's like you're finding structures that are just messed up. I can find you. Oh man, I don't even remember.
This is why, like the next. So I'm glad we broke the ice, because next time I'll be a little bit more prepared. Although we did address a lot of stuff, and I actually said some stuff.
Fort Independence. It's, is this Fort Independence?
Some of these things actually have.
On Castle Island, yeah. If you look on Castle Island in Boston, there's actually almost all forts in Boston are pieces of like star forts. It's kind of cool looking, but a lot have been dismantled to build for urban planning, right? So Fort Independence, if you pull that up, I can't see your screen, but like there's
You can't see my screen, bro?
No, not right now. I mean, I can't see. I see, that's like a weird angle. Actually, what we've talked about is how did they make those pictures?
Airships, I think. Airships panoramic. It's a great question. I think
even airships, it's like, come on, like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know. It's like super early. Like the camera has to be super.
There you go. That's oh wow, look at that, dude. Fort Independence. Okay,
right down the street from me. So.
Gravy, dude. Really? Yeah, you should get
it's about 20 minutes away, but like I haven't even gone there yet. Literally, I haven't even like explored that yet. So.
Oh man.
I know.
Yeah, so this is like I plan
anyway,
on doing more. I plan on doing way more of this. Getting
yeah,
like I got to have Toronto Joubert on because he's gonna help correlate me with He's got I believe he's got a history degree too, and he's enthused about this work.
awesome.
I plan on having more bears on. Anybody who's interested in what I do, I plan on doing that more when I get a line of sight on it and I have the time to do it. So
For sure. And for me,
yeah, thanks for coming
yeah.
on. Oh.
I'm gonna put some more content online. I think like that's kind of like my thing. I haven't really broken the golf courses in Preston.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a Michelle
feedback from the comments. Thanks, guys.
That's Michelle Gibson right there, big time. Is like she kind of, for me, she's one of the first people to talk about that stuff. So, yeah, well, quadrillions and yeah, I know. Like, there's so much. I mean, I don't know. I think the red bricks are just fillers out in Europe. Like, they're just fillers. They started learning how to make them, and they just like patched it up. But then when it came to America, they like used, bricks for real. Like, all right, well, we might as well give up doing that. We're just going to start using bricks like all the time. Yeah. So, and I have photographic evidence of that too. I'm like, wow, just walking around like old castles in Europe. It's just like, all right, cool. This is for real. In the trees, like, oh man, when I finally,
that's a whole nother thing. Yeah, I think
I know.
We're talking about it.
Another time.
I have a video with Transit Bear where I went over a documentary about the flood and how, looking at it as truth, like I believe the antediluvian world. Yeah, the giant trees, or Yggdrasil. There's a lot of old mythologies, or not even creation myths that talk about the tree of life. Okay, I think it's real quick. I think it's an interlaced matrix of the tree of life, the plane of the Terra. I call it the Lego. I call them monoliths too. Lego lists are like everything incorporated into one, like the monoliths, possibly the plane of the Terra. Also, I believe it's solidified titans too. I think it's a mix of everything, possibly.
So in the symbols, right, carry on too. So like the symbol of the tree of life, I think, is like an ancient symbol. So that, I think there's something telling.
Right, Yggdrasil. Right, yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, no, this is great. I know we kind of, I may have overstepped a little bit, but I think
you were fine, Paul.
Because I'm like super, enthusiastic about, one
that's
thing.
what people like. That's what gets people involved. That's what gets people involved, and that's the point I want to make before we wrap it up. Is,
and if I was to do like a stay tuned kind of thing, is how you've explored how like the detail and the decoration of monuments is like a plaster. You said you were going to interview like a guy who does like plaster and casting.
Hopefully
I've messaged you and I've dove into that like so hard, like just the styles and why and how important it is to carry on that information and that craft from generation to generation. It's literally like I've purchased books. I don't have them in front of me, but like how important it is to preserve, for instance, ancient structures, or what you have in front of us, how important it is to preserve that. And there's actual like people who go to school to do that, literally. And it's like no effing way. Like, and I think that's one of like the carrying the batons of the old, like the last iteration or the last generations, whether it's Roman or, you want to say Revolutionary War, kind of like, or like any time, like the last 200 to 500 years or 1,000 years, whatever we consider the time dilation to be. I think that it's very important to have people who know about like cement, how to put the makeup on the structures, which is like the plaster, and restore, and that's hopefully like what we talk about like next time, because that's literally like I really get into it, and I've seen it with my very eyes, and literally the wise up stuff with how like massive structures were just built out of wood. I mean, that's huge. That I've seen that. Like that's literally like, and like the metal rebar that's holding up structures. Oh my God, Dustin, if I could. Sometimes I wish because I carry, if anyone listening, I'm carrying my Instagram, you know, whatever, my camera with me, like my phone. I'm just like, Dustin, I'm in like an ancient structure. Like, this is crazy. And like,
That's the whole essence of
yeah.
bushwhacking, though. Like, I just hopped out of the car at a red light the other day and got a picture of a plaque because I've been meaning to do it. And I was just like, I stopped at a red light, wasn't paying attention, getting home. And I look over, I'm like, oh, you know, that's, I used to do that with fishing, you know, hop out and see a stream of bushwhacking fishing. So,
for sure.
So to hammer it home for people that are listening, to hammer this point home for the viewers and listeners, thank you very much for stopping by. And if I, for Paul, like, if I can inspire somebody who's communicated with me, and it's all worth it. And not, you see the earth a little differently, or the realm a little differently, when you can get out in your own neighborhood and do the research and boots on the ground. Of course, it's cool to get on the internet and do some research too. Make sure you get out in the field, as I say, field work. Okay. Yeah. And I'm lucky that and grateful that I have these books and everything, and that I'm in the city. It doesn't mean that if you don't have the books or whatever, or if you're not in a big city, that you might not have something to look into as well. So if you're interested, stay tuned, and you can communicate with me on my IG, get to it at my YouTube channel. And if you do have books or whatever, or family members that maybe want to have books taken off their hands, offer to help them out. Clean out the basement, clean out the garage or the attic. You might have old gems that are valuable now because a lot of the internet censorship. So that's kind of what I like to promote here on my channel as well. Not just the research aspect of it, but finding and saving old stuff, whether it's books or old world artifacts. For example, check this out, and I'll end on this, or we'll wrap it up. The Battle of the Bulge has been going around in the bear community. Shout out to the Unbearables and Owen. But so my neighbor at my parents' house, old gentleman Paul Narconis. Wow, how fitting is that? Old. He was old when I was a kid. He'd always walk around the neighborhood. Everybody knew him. As a matter of fact, when my dog got out, he would follow Paul. He would never. I could never catch him, but he'd follow Paul down the street. Anyway, Paul was in World War II, and this is a. Let's see here. This is a speed loader ammo crate, and this was in, when he passed away, it was in his chest, and his brother said I can have anything I wanted in there, and I grabbed this, an old ammo, and allegedly this thing was in the Battle of the Bulge, because Paul was in Battle of the Bulge, Ardennes Forest, so allegedly, could it be, if anybody notices, military. So yeah.
Looks a little painted up, you know. So
that's hammering it home. So, yep, get out there and into your attics and your basements, and you know you could do research like this as well. Paul, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. We're going to be doing another one. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Hey, Brandon Bonanza, what's up? I'm going to be on your show next Monday. Keeping it rolling. Everybody, go check out Brandon Bonanza. Sub to his channel. Dude puts out great podcasts. Lado's Gravy. He's got his head on his shoulders. So, yeah. Well, I have an idea. We'll end on, because I'm a gamer, and I had a gaming truth drop episode last time, and I forgot to play this one. So I'm a big fan of Assassin's Creed, and with what we were talking about, you know, Babylon and cities and, you know, the industrial Rust Belt, this is a really good fitting, right to the point aspect of, we also have to hold up the mirror. You know, we always say they, the robber barons, this and that. They're placating to what we want as for our services also. So, you know, I often say that the crowd that grabs the torches and the pitchforks to go to the castle and burn it and get the wizards out of the ivory towers, I'm beginning to see more and more now that mob burns itself out, kills itself before it even gets to the destination, because it's so, you want to say the woke crowd or the normies or NPCs, it's so uncohesive that you don't want to take over what you can't replace. Okay. Now we'll end on this clip. So stay with me afterwards, Paul. I'm going to end this show right now. So just so we can wrap up right quick, I'm going to play a clip out of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, I think, when it was from England. And when he dispatches one of the robber barons, what they say as he's sending him off on his way, it's very important to remember. Yeah. And to, don't, it's all the government, or we got to overthrow. don't work to overthrow something that which you can't replace, because what will come afterwards is way worse. And it's throughout history. It doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. So if you got any last words or whatever, again, thank you for everyone. This was another episode of Bushwhacking History. Paul was a great guest out of Boston, and we got a lot more work to do, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you. So for the viewers and the listeners, after this clip plays, it's going to be the end. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike, but I think we're good. And thanks again. Hit like, share, subscribe. Paul and I will be doing more work together. Boston. Check out Brandon Bonanza. I'll be on his channel next week. And that's another episode. So here it is. Assassin's Creed, Dispatching a Robber Baron.
Last shilling from the people of London. You've stolen your last shilling from the people of London.
Those animals squander their savings. We are the experts in investment. Nothing would be built or improved. Nothing would rise above the muck without our hand guiding. No creating the future. They benefit as much as their work.
It is their city, not yours.
Without our investments, there would be no city.
For the path of the dead.